Okay, application for factoring. I go over 3 examples and you have to do 3 problems. So it says, find the area of the shaded region, okay? So first of all, your shaded region is just this part here. So you have to find the area of that rectangle. We all know that that's the length multiplied by the width, and that's my answer. But the problem is the length is 4 and the width is x, so I don't know x. Okay, so what do I know the area of? I know the area of this white part, okay? So, it says it equals 88, okay? So I'm going to write my equation down here, equals 88. By the way, on the problem that you're going to do on your own, this says 80 square feet. It's 80, okay? SQ feet, okay? A lot of people thought that was a 59, okay? Okay, so we all know that the area has got to be the length times the width. So of this white part, okay, remember the white part, that's what I know the area for. That's the area for the black part, okay? The area of the white part is the length times the width. Well, the length I know is x plus 3, and the width, well, you don't see anything labeled there, but if you just look at the other side, it has to be x as well as the other side, okay? So x plus 3 by x. And that's what I'm going to multiply then to fill out the equation, because that's 88. So you got x plus 3 times x. Okay, so that's pretty easy to multiply. So we take 1x times 1x, and we multiply 3 by 1x, and that's going to give me 1x to the power of 2, and then 3x. Now, I don't have anything that would go together here, so I just come down here and write 1x to the second plus 3x. Okay. Because the length times the width equals the area, so it's x plus 3 times x, which is 1x to the second plus 3x equals 88. Now it's time to solve the equation. So it has 2 answers because of the second power. But again, we also have this variable x that is not to the second power, so I need to set this up for factoring, but we're not set because I don't see the equals 0. The whole point of factoring is so you can use the f1, f2 equals 0. Well, I need to subtract 88 from both sides, and that would go here. So I have 1x to the second plus 3x minus 88 equals 0. So I am factoring a trinomial, 3 terms. So I see what we have for the GCF. Do a GCF check, and then I make my t-table. Okay, so the GCF, 3 things you check for: negative, x, and then the GCF itself. Now my first number is not negative, so I don't need negative. I don't have x on each term. 88 doesn't have one. And then 1, 3, and 88 is just a 1. 1 GCF, so we don't have to use that. Okay, then I go A, B, C, and I take positive 1 times negative 88. Remember, A is 1x to the second, okay? So we can disregard the 1, okay? But I use the 1 to multiply. So it's negative 88. So I'm trying to minus to get the factors to come to positive 3. Okay. 1 and 88, no. 88 divided by 2 is 44, not even close. 88 divided by 3 is a decimal. 88 divided by 4 is 22. No. Divide by 5, decimal. 88 is not divisible by 6, nor is it divisible by 7. If we divide it by 8, we come to 11. That's it. 11 minus 8 is 3. Now to have it come to positive 3, you need a positive on 11. And a negative up there means the signs of the factors have to be the opposite. Okay. Okay, now A again was 1. So if A is 1, we can just make 2 parentheses with x minus 8 and x plus 11. Put equals 0. You don't have a GCF. So this is F1, this is F2. So x minus 8 could equal 0, or x plus 11 could equal 0. So we add an 8 to both sides. That gives me 8. Subtract an 11 from both sides. That's negative 11. Okay, now the higher answer is 8. So that's the one I want to put up here for my width. Okay, and then 4 times 8 would be 32. Okay, and area is in square units, but that's fine. Okay. Okay, next problem. A cliff diver jumps from a ledge at 96 feet above the ground with an initial upward velocity of 16 feet per second. After how many seconds does the diver hit water? So we're trying to calculate the number of seconds. Now, this is kind of about units here of measurements, not about a shape. Okay, so I want to trace the path of what's happening here with the units, how they relate. So feet and seconds, and x is applied to the seconds, y is applied to the feet. So it would be the feet per second. We know our feet per second is 16. Okay, now a diver doesn't just go down here. He goes up, comes down. If you ever watch the Olympics, you see that. Nobody's ever won a gold medal just by doing a belly flop down in the water. So we start, before the 16 feet per second, before the acceleration upward, we started at 96 feet. Okay, now he's going to enter water, which is basically like the ground is in one of those other problems, so that's 0 feet, okay? And this is a parabola. Okay, it's a quadratic. If I represent this with an equation, it's called a quadratic equation, meaning we start with x to the second, and then plus an x term plus a constant equals y. Okay, so here we put a number that's not even in the problem. It's the force of gravity, which is negative 16, as we learned in previous lessons. Now the feet per second, 16 goes here, and then the constant, the 96, is where I started from. Now 0 feet takes the place of the y variable. Okay, so now I solve the equation. It would have 2 solutions to it. And we also have this x that isn't to the second, so we set it up for factoring. It's already set. Okay, that's good. So I can set up my trinomial factoring with the greatest looking for the greatest common factor out of the trinomial, and then seeing what factors would equal the middle term. So the greatest common factor, negative x GCF. So I do need a negative here because we have a negative in front on this number here. Okay, I don't need x because 96 doesn't have a multiple of x behind it. Okay, and then the GCF, 16, 16, 96. Well, that's a little bit, So let's figure out all the factors of 16 and see which ones 96 is divisible by. Well, all the factors, 116, 2 by 8, 3 is a decimal, then twin factors of 4. Okay, so on a calculator, I basically just see what's the highest factor 96 is going to divide by, because I have 2 16s, which I know 16 is divisible by all of these. How about 96? Okay, right away that works. So 16 is the one I want to use as my GCF. So I factor out a negative 16. Then we go divide. Can't divide by x though, because what about here? You don't have an x. You can't divide 96 by 16x, because 96 doesn't have an x to divide from. So that's 1 with x to the second. That's going to be negative 1 with x. Not only do I divide, it also changes the operation sign when you divide by negative. Okay, and that's going to switch to a minus because I'm dividing by a negative, and that's 6. Okay, so I'm not done yet because I have a trinomial 1x to the second minus 1x minus 6. So I need to multiply 1 times negative 6. It's negative 6. So it's a minus trying to come to 1, negative. 1 and 6, no. 2 and 3, yes. So 1 negative means our 3 is negative, and when I have that negative product, that means the signs are the opposite. So it's plus 2 minus 3. Now, what did your A equal? Your A is 1x to the second. So again, if it's 1x to the second, I drop the 1, okay? And I can just use x plus 2, x minus 3. Now my negative 16 factor goes down here, and it equals 0, but since there's no x in that factor, I don't need it to solve. These are the two factors I'm using to get my two answers with the zero product property. So x plus 2 equals 0, x minus 3 equals 0. So I subtract 2, and that's negative 2. I add 3, and that's positive 3. Okay, so 3 is the answer you want to put. Now, you don't need to write this down, but I got lucky there in that when I did my GCF, the x squared coefficient, the a ended up being 1. Now, if that's not 1, let's say I would have factored out a this is a what if, okay? And I end up with 4x second, I don't know, minus 7x minus 2. So that's your GCF. And then when I do my t, you want to watch this here because the problem. So 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. It's a minus trying to get to 7 negative, 1 and 8. So we'd have negative 8 plus 1. Now my a this time I didn't get as lucky. It's 4x to the second. Well, I can't just delete a 4, okay, if it's a factor of 4. So I'm going to make 2 lines of parentheses. And I don't break it up into 2 and 2. You need to resist that, okay? So 4x, and then plus 1 minus 8. So I wouldn't divide here. That would stay 4x plus 1, and then this. And the other one we would divide by 4, and that's 1x minus 2. So that's the proper factoring. See, it's not 2x and 2x, it's 4x and 1x, because that's also 4x squared. And then that'd be my F1, F2. We'd drop the negative 4, but this is where that would happen. So be watching. If your A is not a 1, that's how to handle it. Okay, then my last problem. A long jumper jumps with a velocity of 20 feet per second. For how long does he remain in the air? So we have feet and seconds. Okay, it's going to be 20. So he jumps up, comes down. Now, before the acceleration of 20 feet per second, he's on the ground. Okay, so 0 feet's the start and 0 feet's the end. And that changes to how this problem is going to be worked. So my gravity's negative 16. We got 20x. Now, zeros are starting height, and so I don't need that constant there. So now there's only 2 terms that I'm going to need to deal with. Okay, and we do need to factor still, though, because there's 2 answers, but you also have this x that is not to the second. So this time there's 2 terms. So we do GCF, and then we check and see if we have a difference of perfect squares. By the way, the perfect squares are like 1, 4, 9, 16, because all those can be written as a factor times itself. Okay, so again, negative x, GCF are the 3 things you always look for. So we do have a negative in front. We do have x on both our terms, so we need x here. See, I didn't on the last one because that last term didn't have x. Well, it ain't here now. Okay, and then the GCF, 16 and 20. If you know it, put it. If you don't, 16 is 1/16, 2 by 8, and 4 by 4. Okay, 20 is not divisible by 16 or 8. It is by 4. So negative 4x is the greatest common factor of the binomial. So I divide, binomial means there's 2 terms. Trinomial means there's 3. Okay. So that divides to 4. And you get rid of that x, and that takes that down to just a regular x. And then 20 divided by negative 4 is negative 5. Now, when I'm looking at the dots, I'm looking at these. I'm not looking there. There's no, the minus operator is there. 5's not a perfect square. There's no whole number factor, integer factor times itself that's going to give you 5, okay? And not only that, your x isn't even to the second power, okay? Not only do these two numbers have to be perfect squares, the x also has to have an even exponent. It doesn't. It'd be a 1. Okay, so the factoring's done. Now I'm labeling the factors that help me solve the equation. So negative 4 times x could equal 0, or 4 times x minus 5 could equal 0. So I divide by negative 4, and I get 0. I add 5 to both sides. 4 times x equals 5. Divide by 4. And 5 divided by 4 is a decimal, okay? And it's 1.25. This is the first time I shouldn't see any decimals till down here, okay, when factoring. Okay, so 1.25 is the higher answer, so that's how long the jumper was in the air.